Started. Call the meeting to order at 7:03. First item is the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bollenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Chandler. Here. Ms. Compatello.
Here.
Mr. Oath. Here. Ms. Oliverio.
Here.
Ms. McCallum.
Here.
Mr. Rodilla.
Here.
Mayor Perry is online. Are you there? I think she is. Yes. No, that's, yeah. Someone else just popped up. Okay, I will put her as absent for now, but I think she is coming. Solicitor Corbel.
Present.
And Engineer Keenan.
Here.
Okay. And myself, so we have a quorum.
Right. Great. The consent agenda, the council meeting minutes from March 28th, 2024, and the bill list from April 11th of 2024 are all in the OneDrive for council to review. So we need a motion to approve the April 11th, 2024 consent agenda pending the bill list approved by the borough president, manager, and treasurer.
Second.
Ms. Bollenbacher, Ms. Compatello, any discussion or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Public comments on agenda items. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue appearing on today's agenda. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Comments on non-agenda items will be taken at the end of tonight's meeting. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council has the option to respond or not at the end of the address. Please state your name and physical address for the record. There, anybody? Nobody? You're on Zoom, you could raise your hand. No hands raised. All right, President's report. So the crafting community was awarded at the ALON conference, the banner, 2024 banner community. So we got this nice little award here. I'll pass this around for everybody. Basically, I'll just read what it says. It's signed by the county executive, Sarah Imarato. It says each year we celebrate local government during the month of April, highlighting the work that elected and appointed officials do in the local communities to serve their residents, organizations, and businesses. Local government, including municipal authorities, have the most direct impact of any level of government on the daily lives of residents. It is my privilege and honor to the municipalities and authorities that are committed to professional development, prudent fiscal management, transparency, accountability, and proactive communications. They engage community residents and stakeholders. Your designation as a banner community is a public recognition of those efforts and an acknowledgement of how fortunate we are to have an entity that provides effective, efficient, and accountable services in Allegheny County. Congratulations on this recognition. So all of you should be very proud, including the staff, about this citation award. So I'll pass this around for everybody to see, and we'll have it, of course, in the office. Thank you. All right. That is all I have for the president's report, mayor's report. Ms. Perry, have you joined?
She just got it. She
Oh,
just got in. She just said, it's about the text her link,
Oh, there she is.
and that's everything.
All right. We'll give her a few seconds. Solicitor's report, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to announce that following the meeting, Borough Council will hold an executive session to discuss collective bargaining matters. That's the end of my report.
All right. Mayor's report, Ms. Perry.
Nothing new to report from New York City tonight. Thank you.
All right. Engineers report.
All right, good evening. Starting off the first matter, the Broadhead project. Again, this is a major sewer separation project that will be located primarily on Broadhead Boulevard. For the course of the project, there are 5 properties that are affected by easements. Up to this point, we have received 3 easement agreements signed off by the property owners. Right now, we're just trying to obtain the last 2 that are owned by 1 property owner. Right now, we're back and forth with their legal personnel trying to get this matter settled. But right now, it's really what it is. We're still going back and forth trying to get it resolved. Moving on to the Public Works Building. Again, we have a grant for 200 grand that is set to expire at the end of June. The past month, we've come together to decide on how we were going to spend that money. Initially, it was for putting on new garage doors, building insulation, and bringing the electrical up to the building. But just recently, we had received a quote for the insulation, and it came up to be way higher than what we were anticipating. So that has led us to go back to the drawing board to decide what other ways to go about spending this money. So right now we are in the process of doing just that. We are thinking about still going forward with the garage doors, finishing the concrete slab and then building itself, and as well as putting in the rough utility installations. We're also talking with the grant project manager with this matter.
Yeah, and I just want to bring up that council, Mr. Huff had a question about the extension and whatnot. We talked to Dan Tobin, who's our rep at the county. And so he has been very involved in this conversation, and he's going to chat with us before we file the extension too, because we're just getting some of the things we could buy via like co-stars or just buy them outright. But the things you have to bid just take so much longer, and it's so unpredictable what you'll get, that we want to make sure that we don't lose the money. And so and some of the things that we thought we might be able to buy, we're not able to, we have to bid them, and so we're having that conversation with him. There's no guarantee, but if we don't get the money spent in time anyway, it doesn't matter. So,
No
but
guarantee of the extension.
right, but it does sound like it's pretty likely based on what he's already told us. So we wouldn't explore it if it wasn't. So.
And is there any kind of plan B? If the extension is not great?
Yeah, a couple things we can buy right away. The doors we can buy, because they're on CoStars, they're a bought thing. And we can buy probably some of the other things, so we can buy certain things and rush and get them, and get those things done. And that's what we're trying to figure out. Yeah.
Right, Mr. Dan Tobin is the PM for the grant, and he's been made aware of our interest in an extension, and that's our next further discussion with him. On to the Borough Stairs project, the Belvedere Stairs have been completed. It's a handrail replacement. We are scheduled to do a final walkthrough eventually to make sure everything's been done to plan. The next set of stairs are to begin in May and have a timeline. All sets of stairs have a timeline of being completed in August. Questions on the stairs, we'll move on to the road paving program, which I have a slide to share with everybody. Okay, so over the course of the past few months, I've done some street assessment surveying with the program Vitalytics that we have obtained, and it has given me a list of the streets and the grades that they are based on, considering their conditions, potholes, raveling, rutting. And the list that you see here is the list of the top streets that have the grade of 5, which is the worst condition graded. I'm gonna start off first by talking about the costs that you see here. So we have a budget for this year of $325,000. And over here is a price for $365,000. And I just want to say that this is how it is right now. It can be truncated down by just eliminating some of the lengths of the streets to be paved. And I included that because it's best practice to pave from intersection to intersection on streets. And it's very difficult to get within the budget and meet that criteria as well. So at this time, it's just listed that for the last one on South Linwood, that it is to be paved from the intersection of South Linwood and Promenade to the Woodlawn intersection. And that's why those numbers are what they are. Some other numbers that affected the calculations here. The paving unit price, this is 15% more than what the price was for last year's per square yard. That's how that came up to be. And just going down the list of streets here, we selected Orchard Street, which, as you can see on the bottom here, is a makeshift map of Grafton Borough and the locations of the streets and the approximate areas where the paving is proposed to be. Just going down the list here, Orchard Street from South Linwood to the South Grandview intersection. South Grandview Avenue from Ewing to Woodlawn. Locust Street, proposing to do the entirety Locust Street. Manor Street from address 2 Manor and to the address 98 Manor. McMahon Avenue from address 97 to address 199. Promenade Street, it will begin at Promenade and Chartiers intersection and continue up all the way to High Street intersection. Next is Middle Street. We're proposing to do all of Middle Street. And again, South Linwood Avenue is being proposed. I have 805 feet, which is the entire length from the intersection to intersection. Now, if you wanted to stay within the $325,000 budget, we could limit this down to just 360 feet of that road, and we would be within 325,000. But overall, that's where it has come up with. Again, this is based solely on the results that were provided from the assessment and others. This is one combination, but it's based on the worst condition combination, which I feel is the priority. Again, this could be updated if other streets are to be considered, but overall, this is what we came up with, what I came up with.
Can I add on to that?
Yes, you can.
So for the benefit of council, none of this is new. We've been doing this road paving program for some time, certainly since all of us have been in council and in various different approaches and iterations before that. We had a 5-year road paving program identified over the past few years that we had been following based on data from, I think about 4 years ago. We weren't actually we're not even at the end of that 5-year program, but we got a contract with a new provider, Violetix, that gave us new data before that 5 years was up. We were getting towards the end of it, and it was getting time to update our road assessments anyways, but we actually did it a little bit early. So last year we had been going through our list. The past few years, we had been each year identifying the next series of streets to repave based on which ones were the worst. This is the next iteration of that, and we do have recent updated new data from the last year that we're going off now, as opposed to the version from a few years ago that led to that initial 5-year plan. And the roads, our infrastructure committee has looked over each of these roads that Larry has shared, and we're actually in pretty good shape. So we have a number of roads that have been identified as the worst. That does exclude some of the roads that people may think of as the worst, because those roads are already included in other projects that include, like, such as the Broadhead project. So some of the roads that are already slated to be repaved are excluded from that repaving program because we have them funded through another source, and they will happen through another source. The roads that are left in bad condition are actually not in that bad condition. So we feel that we're pretty good about maintaining our roads on a regular basis and keeping up with this regular maintenance so that we avoid really terrible issues.
I'd like to bring one thing up too that we've been dealing with in the office.
And just mention it to council, if you haven't already heard about it, is the pothole down on Wall Street by the shopping center. We, at some point, the borough has not been maintaining that. That is not maintained by the borough. That is maintained by the shops on either side. But we're struggling through a legal process right now of getting the right person to, because there's not necessarily one single person that paves it, everybody does. That nobody wants to take responsibility for it now that it's a problem. So I did have Larry, when he was doing this, look at what it would cost for us to pave that street and to pave the cross street, the one that runs that street that runs all the way through the shopping center. Now, both of those combined would average, if you repaired them every 10 years, would cost about $250-some thousand. So it would add about $25,000 to the annual budget if we did them every 5 years. Now, that was for Walsh and that's really long street. If we just took over Walsh, it would probably add about $5,000 to $8,000 a year in cost to the borough if we had to repave it every 5 years. So I just want to throw that out there because I don't know how much in legal fees. We've definitely contacted Anna Jewett quite a bit. Susan has been working with that and we've probably spent a lot of time. A lady lost 2 tires in the pothole today. And was irate and understandably so. And it's confusing for people that we don't maintain it, but we don't, and we haven't for years. So we're working through the issue.
There's a hearing.
In 2 weeks, maybe.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I'll just say, because I know I've shared this with others, I brought this to the borough manager's attention shortly after he started, because it is my preference that we maintain the roads in this borough. And that one is, if a private entity maintains something for a certain amount of time, it enters into different legal territory. So there's a reason why we haven't been doing it, because it has been privately maintained, but I think it is very much to our benefit to explore ways to put our roads in that area back under borough control, because it is confusing for residents and has not been conducive to good maintenance to have it under a patchwork of private control.
Sorry, guys, I don't know what that is.
trying to get you to the bottom.
It wants to find that woman's tires
Right.
in the pothole.
But it is worth mentioning that to everyone, because we know that if we're talking about road improvements and there are any residents who are seeing this list and see that that road is not on the list, they may wonder why, and that is why.
Yep.
It's not under our control.
So Larry, this is informational right now at this point.
Correct, yes,
And then-
preliminary, but this is what we're looking at this time.
Yeah, the goal is to have this be ready for bid by next meeting and be able to take this for bid. So that's where we will enlist Gateway's help with getting that done.
So part of it is any discussion on any of these streets at this point, and thoughts from the budget standpoint. There's recommendations to be over budget on this one, to keep it under budget, or potentially there's
Well,
other streets.
And one thing you could very easily do is we can add that last street as an alternate. And if we get good bids back and they're, and it's only a little bit, because that's just an estimate. Until you get the bids back, you don't know what you're gonna get. So if we do it all as one project and then add that one street as an alternate, then we can figure out, then you can decide at that point whether you want to do it or not. If you want to keep these streets.
No
In the
other-
meantime, we have this list available.
Yep.
So we're not making decisions on this until a future council meeting, but council members can go and visit those locations if they'd like to see and assess for themselves.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure this is on the drive yet, but we'll make sure to add it.
I can put that on there, yes. All right, that said, we'll move on to the next item here. Full bathhouse project, again, progress is coming along good. Gonna have a grand opening to be scheduled scheduled. That is yet to be finalized. Next Friday, there is a plan for me, the engineer, the consulting engineer, and the architect to do a progress check on everything that's going on down there. DPW is still scheduled to work on the sidewalk out in front of it. But other than that, everything's coming along. Questions regarding that? Next item is the PA American Water, their water main replacement schedule going on in the borough. They have since, up until now, they've worked on Stair Street, and then they've worked on Crafton Boulevard. They got 2 more streets to go. I received information today that on Monday, they will be sending out resident letters to the homeowners along that street to make them aware of the work that will be going on. And work is scheduled to begin next Thursday on the 18th. Next item, we're going to revisit the C20 project. We have since this point submitted our letter of intent, and also over the course of time we've had looked at the projects that will be going on for this C20. Since then, some things have changed as far as projects go, and some budget items as well. Rick would like to touch base on those items for us.
Thank you, Larry. Yes, so we have some slides to show, and I want to do 2 things tonight. One, talk about the projects themselves, what they were back when we met in January. Those are concepts, conceptual designs and alignments. Still needing preliminary design to iron out any details, any preliminary details to ensure that the concept was able to be constructed. And I don't mean constructible because the concepts are constructible, but there are sometimes site issues that will kill a concept that aren't part of the evaluation process in conceptual design. So that's one thing. Let's talk about what the projects were and what they are. And then also what the cost was then and what the cost is now. So that they've changed. And the last item is then to talk about the engineering services that we originally gave you a budget for, and then the work, the design work that was asked in order to make the deadlines for the GROW grant in order to get that funding in time for these projects. So we could start with if you pull up the one map for I guess it's marked January. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay, so this was the original list of projects. If you look to the left, the blue dashed line, that's the Duncan Avenue project. So that's connecting 7 inlets. And these are going to be separated from the combined sewer system. They go into the combined system now. These 7 inlets will be captured and put into a separate storm line and then discharged down Duncan. I'm sorry, that's an old drawing because it shows it in the backyards. The line is on Duncan Avenue. So it comes down Steuben and then it goes down the street and then it connects to a large 72-inch diameter storm sewer on Maxwell. And you split ownership of the Maxwell line with Ingram. It's a very odd agreement. You share each year, somebody takes ownership of the line and operates and maintains it accordingly. So hopefully the operation and maintenance is in the area you're not owning it. But in any event, so we wanted to make sure that that line could take on this additional flow. So there was a hydraulic and hydrogeologic design and model prepared to show that large diameter storm sewer could take on this additional flow. So the Duncan Avenue project was proposed, and when you see the other drawing, that project has moved into preliminary design and will move into final design. As that project appears, it is very likely to proceed. So that did not change. If you move up stream on Steuben, you see, if you zoom in the center there, Larry, that red line and the blue, right? So the blue line that's pointing to a paper street in between, well, next to the CVS and the post office. What that project was a detention project. It was a large tank that would collect stormwater from Steuben, hold it in the tank, and then collect and allow infiltration to occur. And so then there's a partial removal, partial separation of flow from the combined sewer. It's not as effective as 100% separation like the Duncan project. But there was enough there to get us to the 10%, to get us to the 85% capture. That project, in combination with the next project upstream at the St. Philip's parking lot. There's a project there, and the project was a large tank for the same purpose, to collect stormwater from Steuben and bring it into the parking lot at that corner, and then allow it to fill and then exfiltrate out of the tank, infiltrate into the subsurface. And once again, partial separation. In those instances, when those tanks become full as a result of a large rain event, larger than what the tank is designed to handle, the water goes back into the combined system. So again, not a complete separation. And if you look to the right, the lines up in the upper northern part of Crafton, several streets, that's the GSI, or the green infrastructure projects that were proposed. Those are also a series of minor bump outs to those streets that would allow water to run into these areas, and then once again infiltrate and give a partial removal of that storm water from the combined system. So those green infrastructure projects, they may have changed from length to street, but that grouping of projects is still intact. What ended up having a problem was the St. Philip parking lot project. What ended up happening is that after contacting those folks, the cemetery, there's some uncertainty related to the cemetery and burial sites. And you can see headstones right adjacent to the edge of the parking lot. So it turned out that was pretty much a deal breaker in having a large excavation in that area to install those tanks. So we had to stop that area. Now that was a big tank taking a lot of flow. So when we lost that, now we're not at our 85% capture. So we had to find another project or projects to compensate for those. So if you go to the other drawing, so that, and then the paper street as well, with losing the parking lot project, the paper street, because it wasn't full separation, was an opportunity to turn that into full separation. So if you pull up the next map, we'll show where the projects are now and how they changed. So you see to the right, the green infrastructure projects are the same. To the far left is the Duncan project. You can see it's shown now in the street. It goes down Steuben and turns down Duncan. What's changed is the parking lot project, if you can point to that intersection to the right, up Steuben a bit. Keep going to the right there. Right at the beginning of that dash line, that's where the water now from Steuben is being collected, and the inlets along the way are going to be piped down to that paper street, and instead of put into a tank, because the area wasn't large enough now, picking up the St. Philip parking lot flow, it just wasn't big enough. So now it requires the flow to be transmitted down that paper street and across the Crafton Ingram Shopping Center road, which you have a right of way to install these pipes. So that alone was not enough. The last part of the project is on Linden, and that is also a complete separation proposal. So it'll be collecting the inlets on Steuben and along inlet Linden, and all this water now is discharging to the Maxwell Street storm sewer. So we had to update the study to pick up the rest of these flows to make sure that storm sewer could sustain the additional flows, and it was found that it can. We met with Ingram Borough as well, explained the study to them, gave that study to their engineer, and they've accepted it and understand the additional flow that's going to that pipe. So those are the changes in the project. So let's look at the cost now.
Can I ask, I want to
Yeah,
ask
sure,
one
sorry.
question. No, that's okay. With because we were just literally talking about Wall Street, which is the next street over from where your paper street is. It's see where he's at now.
Okay,
There might be some interest in us repaving or like taking that back over, or, you know, there's, I don't know, but could that be moved to that location? A street down as
Yeah.
a separation, because we have a right of way on that one as well, but I don't know if that changes any of the other calculations, so.
you just have to look at it. It wouldn't change, it would just be physical restrictions. For example, you might be wondering, why don't we just run all the way down Steuben Street instead of turning up the paper street, and then that's a lot more piping to run up the paper street. Well, if we could just run down Steuben, it would solve all our problems, but the utilities are blocking us from doing that.
Okay.
So you've got intersections and you've got utilities that won't allow us to continue there. Not saying we're giving up on that hope, but these were the projects submitted to the grant agency. We wanted them to be conservative, so that we weren't submitting a budget and then asking for more later. So if anything, we hope to ask for less after we do the final 90% design. And I'll say that these are currently at 60% of design. So we have relative confidence that these projects will proceed. So the answer is, if the logistics work, and it's more suitable to go down that road for whatever reason, then certainly that could be looked at. I don't think I know that the Grow Grant folks don't like significant changes in what we've submitted to the LOI, but I think we could sell that one street over, same project. I think that would be acceptable. So that's something that we certainly can look at, knowing that could kill half a bird with the project along doing that work. So there's not much paving in the paper street, just at the end, you know, once it pops out. What is that? Is that Busy Beaver?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. In any event, so those are the physical locations. So let's look quickly at the costs. So if we could look at the January 2024 cost first. This is what was presented back in January.
R1.
C20 overall cost summary. Why doesn't that say January? Yeah, that's it. The one up at the top. Should be. No, not it. Sorry. Try that one, and then yes. So you can see Duncan, that was 900,000 was the estimate as a concept. You could see the paper street and the St. Philip parking lot, those were a bargain. They weren't great performers, although, you know, in combination with the other projects, it's what we needed, but that was a low cost. You'll see the difference, that goes up to 1.6 million because we switched to running all that piping. But the GSI project dropped significantly, so we saved some money there. But in any case, the 2.4 million is a capital cost only. It's not contingency, it's not engineering, surveying, permitting, right of ways, any of that. It's just because they're all just percentages, and the same percentages get added, whatever the capital cost is. So we're just comparing the capital cost, so you could see the increase based on changing those projects from concept to preliminary design. So 2.4 million. If you go now to the other file that you opened, and it goes to 2.96 million. So if you remember, Duncan Avenue was 900,000, it's 860. The paper street was about 600,000, it's 1.6. And the GSI projects, I think, were about 800, and they're at 450. So the total now is 2.96, it was 2.4. So it increased approximately $600,000. So that was the increased cost related to, you know, not being able to implement the concepts. So any questions on that? Hopefully the pain involved with that 600,000 with a healthy reimbursement a grant. 85% is the max. It will minimize that pain. They have instituted some new non-eligible costs, and paving is one of them. So they're now only allowing to pave the trench that you excavate, which is a bit ridiculous because, you know, you're gonna have a trench down the middle of a road when in most cases you at least pave the lane that the trench is in. So they've just deemed that they won't reimburse that. So now instead of saying, here's our project, what percent do we get? Before they give us the percentage, they go through and take out the ineligible costs, things like the paving. So when we do have a final design and quantities, we'll be able to estimate what we think they'll find eligible and ineligible. So that, you know, let's say it's 2.9 million is the total project. We might say 2.85 is all that's eligible. We'll see that when the time comes. So any questions on that? And we'll move into the engineering budgets.
I have a question. The GROW grant application that was just put in recently, did that go in with the 2.96,
Yes,
the updated
yes.
$2.96 million?
That also, it ended up being 4 million because we added high engineering, design, construction management, contingency, 15% contingency. So once again, trying to be conservative, so we have enough that we're telling them it's a $4 million project as it sits in a half designed state. And then once the 90% complete comes through, and we say, oh, it's 3.2 million now, or whatever the number will be, at least we won't have to ask for additional funds.
And we did get the grant application in on time.
We did,
Guys.
a day early, actually.
Busily
And it's-
working on that, but we wanted to also flag for council, you guys did have to go through several rounds of testing and concepts to find the right things that would fit,
Yes.
and that was not, it's hard to anticipate when you start how many different concepts you'll look at and how quickly you'll find the ones that fit. So we have gone through a little bit more of the engineering budget than we thought we might be at this point to get to the designs that would work for the program.
Yeah, I want to talk about that for sure. And it's not necessarily that we did more work. In fact, the budget that I had given you, I anticipated a lot of that. So the concept designs and all of the modeling and the monitoring and the calculations and all the work, even for the other CSOs that was conducted as part of the compliance for the consent order. That's what that budget was for. It was to comply with the consent order. So it was, since all the projects were designed, the only thing left for C20 was the concept. So in order to comply with the consent order, we had to have concepts. So we had to tell them what the projects were. So yes, getting to that point just for C20, I think we looked at 23 different projects, alternatives, and we presented those, and then some of those got weeded out for whatever reason. Could be just wasn't a good project, or a location for a project, or whatever the elements were that killed it. Could have been cost, but so we were able to weed them down to these projects. But certainly there was a lot of work, and that's really what I want to talk about is the scope of the work for the budget that I presented to you was for compliance of the consent order. Still a ton of work. In fact, one of the attachments, I did an outline. I started an outline on what the report is going to look like for this submittal. And the report is due in June. So all these deadlines in June, but the report's due in June. And you might be able to pull that up, Larry, while I'm talking, just to get a flavor for all the different elements of the actual items that are required in the report. And one item could be 100 hours of work, and some of that work's completed. We're probably halfway through our budget to comply with this order. Now that we have the projects for C20, and now we have to start writing the report. And the report is for all of your CSOs. It's not just for C20. So it's for all the work, even the 39J where we negotiated with the city and requested to do work on their structure. So all of those ideas get presented. You have to submit all the alternative work that was done for Broadhead, for Crafton Boulevard, for South Grandview, all of those projects. So we're reaching back a couple of years, collecting all that data, summarizing and writing a report. So that still has to be done and is part of my original scope to comply with the order. So, so what changed is, as we met, it was decided, and it was, in my opinion, the right and good choice to pursue the grants now. And so what that changed in the scope is that doing the design work, taking the concepts to preliminary and final design and doing the survey work associated was not part of compliance with the order. So when council said, hey, let's go after the grants, it was a timing issue. You wanted to, number one, get the grant now instead of later. There's $30 million left in the grant fund. So when that runs out, there won't be a grant to get. So wise to take it now versus next year. Because next year is when, especially the separate municipalities, all have to have their projects done by the end of the year. So they're ahead of us. Your project doesn't have to be complete until June of 2026. So the race to get the funding before it either runs out or before it becomes very competitive next year was smart to do it now. So it's in. So the idea, and I've been able to break out now the fund, the different costs associated. So I'm going to pass that around. So if you can take that, I'll go over that quickly and just show what each of the project phases costs. So none of the concept work is in here, none of the modeling, none of the monitoring, none of that. Meetings, all of that is still in the original budget to comply with the order because that was required for that work. This breakdown talks about the work required to get the GROW grant. Now, my thought was this would be in 2025. So just basically taking these funds and bringing them into 2024 is what we're talking about. So if we didn't do this now, or if you said stop right now, then this would be done in 2025, early in 2025. So we bid the project, we opened bids in June in 2025, and we finished construction in June of 2026. So that's the schedule. So if you take a look, what's been expended so far is the Duncan 60% design. These were submitted for the LOI. I did put an asterisk by Duncan. That's that Maxwell H&H study and reports. We did two of them. We did one report and we did the update and some HOP work. So that cost is already spent and that work is done.
Do you want to explain what HOP means?
A highway occupancy permit. Because of West Steuben, the PennDOT requires a pretty rigorous submittal, different even what we submit to bid as far as showing that we meet the design standard. So I've just started some of that work and then I stopped and said, well, I just better make sure we come back and talk about costs. So that's Duncan. Then the Duncan survey work was done and you'll see the other survey projects or other projects were not surveyed. So we have the Duncan design at 60%, the Duncan survey. We have the separation projects, which was Linden and Paper Street. That preliminary design was completed for that amount. And then the green infrastructure, the 60% of the green infrastructures, that's the budget for those. And these funds have been expended because this work is complete and the LOI was submitted. Next is what we're going to need, what we've estimated to finish the 90% design, which now requires profiles, plans and drawings, and there are preliminary drawings associated with these with the 60% design, but you can't do those without surveys. So once the surveys are done, we'll do profiles, we'll do one calls, all the different elements that require us to get to 90%. Now, the other 10% is essentially any comments from the regulators, from PennDOT, from even the grant agency. So won't be much, but what these estimates take us to is the 90% complete. So it's not a bid document yet. It's just a set of 90% plans and specs that we'll submit in June to meet the requirement of the Grow Grant application. So these will be the costs. These are the cost estimates to do the surveys and the 90% engineering and design work to get us to submit those projects in a full grant application to Alcoasand through the Grow Grant. And then we'll stop because the projects won't, the awards will be given in September, late September usually. And then at that point, we'll regroup and decide what's the timing, what's the schedule, you know, how is the funding, when do you want to start this work? You know, when do we have to start it? Do you want to start it early? There might be a strategy to do the project sooner so that we're not, again, competing not just with grant funding, because we'll have it. We might now be competing with contractors. There's going to be a lot of work in the area in 2025. Maybe if we get something out in late 2024, we get a jump on some of the contractors. As far as not being full and still being a little hungry to bid on work. So we'll regroup when we get to the 90%, which is going to, we'll do 90% in June. We'll regroup when we get the funding allocations in September and then decide what's next as far as schedule goes. And then there'll be a final budget, engineering budget to pull together the bid documents, bid the projects, and then construction administration and inspection, however that work ends up being. But we'll end up having one final work authorization for that work. Now, I'm using the estimate of $3 million worth of projects. That's what we had up on the board, 2.9, you know, without a contingency, assuming when we do the 90%, we're going to be close on our cost estimate. Obviously, we'll do a cost estimate and let you know what we anticipate these final bid items to come in at. You know, the only hesitancy I have is the competition and the amount of work that's going to be in our region and the not enough contractors to do it. So I think it's going to set a stage where contractors either bid really high or they just don't bid. So less bidders means more cost. So that's my only hesitancy in saying, you know, if we didn't have that scenario, if this was a normal bid procedure, we're pretty good at getting close to what these costs are. So I just leave a little caveat on that. But in any event, we'll finish so I'm assuming a $3 million project. And so far, the total cost of these is well within any kind of generic engineering budget estimate that people use to assess what engineering costs should be for construction. So to finish off and doing the engineering administration inspection and to bid those projects, we'll still be within a typical percent-based engineering sanity check that folks use for you know, just understanding the ratio between the engineering budget and the cost of the project. So I guess there is a decision to say, maybe not a decision, but just an acknowledgement, or you know, we'll put this in a work authorization form and send it in for consideration and approval by council for the second set of work. The first work has been expended. And so that actually came out of the original budget for compliance. So if all this is approved, then we'll reinvigorate the budget that we have for compliance. And then we'll have new budgets for the 90% design of the survey. That's a lot. So any questions? Does it make sense?
So one thing I can mention to everybody, you know, this project needs to happen regardless. The nice thing about this budget, you know, normally $100,000 added to a budget would be like, oh my God, how do we make that work? The nice thing about this budget is it's coming directly out of the bond fund. So it's not something that is, you know, it's something that is designed specifically to fund this work already, and we have the money.
And the GROW grant will,
and the GROW grant will
percentage of
offset
that
most of it.
is eligible for engineering, for this type of engineering. They won't reimburse for the concept work, but they will for this work that's been done and it's going to be done.
And I think how we discussed it in the infrastructure committee was that this is almost like floating ourselves alone around this money because it was meant to be paid next year.
Yeah,
So it's basically paying it this year so that we can move forward with the grant application and then we won't have the expense next year, but it'll be covered
Yes.
as part of the Grow grant and it's built into there.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so whatever percentage, and the engineering work, whatever percentage you get, you'll get that full percentage. There isn't anything ineligible as it relates to engineering design.
Mhm.
So you'll get the full percentage for the engineering work that you expect.
So I think what we can do is that that you'll submit a work authorization through Mr. Keenan, who then at our next meeting, is it the next meeting? That we would prepare for potentially approval by council.
I would just caution that this is due in January, no, June.
Mhm.
So, there's still a bit of work to do to meet that deadline. So it might be, if we would lose 2 full weeks. In doing that. So that would put us at the end of April. That would only give us May and maybe 2 weeks in June to do all this work.
We could also have someone make a motion right now to approve this.
We're not
yeah.
voting on the work itself. We're talking about council's approval of the
Of the engineering
invoices.
budget.
The
Of
budget.
the invoices that we.
The overspend of what was budgeted for this year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Make that change?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to make that change and approve the budget that's been spent.
Spent or about to be spent. So the motion would be,
Approve the work order to complete the work that we've discussed and that the engineer has described.
90%
Needed
design.
to get to the June deadline.
Okay.
Mr. Chandler, second, so discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? No. One, so motion passes 6-1.
We'll submit the work offs, so all the paperwork is in order and you have that for your accounting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to see if there are any other questions before we move on? Just give the opportunity.
Yeah, we had that.
Any other questions for our engineer before we move on?
All right, thank you, Rick, for that. Moving on to the last item in the engineer's report, the O&M sewer work that has been bidded. I'd just like to report that we have received the bids and we will be awarding it on the April 25th meeting. Anything else relating to that? Any questions? That concludes the engineer's report for tonight.
Great. All right, manager's report.
All right, thank you. The first thing is the rock salt contract. Every year, we except, well, right now we're on the second option year of a SHACOG purchasing agreement with Cargill. So we currently we just ordered, I should say, I don't know when it's coming. But we just took the last order from last year. We ordered 600 tons last year. And we did not need anywhere near that much. The nice thing is, well, we're taking delivery of the last 170 ton. We have room for just that amount. Ideally, you want to run out of salt or come close to running out of salt and then go back, because when you keep piling salt on top of salt that's already there, it gets compacted. It makes it harder to process through it. It's not ideal. It sits in the backs of the trucks, and you know, in chunks, so it doesn't work quite as well. However, that's where we're at. We don't have to agree to a certain, I know, Mike, you had a question. You don't have to agree to a certain amount right now. We just have to agree that we would like to exercise this option. So it gives us a fixed price. Once we get closer to the season, we can state what exactly we want to take. It will probably be 400 or 500 tons as opposed to what we took this year. but we'll know that at that point. So I wanted to let everybody know that this is not requiring us even to purchase any. It just allows us to do that when we get there. So with that, I'd like a motion to allow the borough manager to exercise their second option year to purchase rock salt from Cargill at an estimated price of $88.60 per ton.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? So that was Mr. Hope and Ms. Bolenbacher second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. The second item on my list is a supplemental hire lift for pool staff. This is to approve the supplemental hire list for the Crafton pool staff that is recommended by the pool manager, which is adding 2 lifeguards and 2 attendants to the pool staff. This is happening. We actually approved the hire list this year much earlier than we did last year. So we had some people trickling in, and we might even get a couple more, but we'll just do it again. This is close to full staff. We might see a couple more people be hired, but with that, I'd like a motion to approve the supplemental hire list for the Crafton pool as recommended by the pool manager.
Ms. Bolenbacher, Ms. Compitello, discussion or questions? On the original list, if you remember, there was open spots on there too, and these are filling those spots. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, and then the last thing is just an update on the waste collection RFP process. I have now had discussions with all of the other providers that are in the area. I had conversations with Vogel, which is Valley Waste Services, and County Hauling. And I have actually now, when I wrote this, I hadn't spoken to Republic. I have now spoken to Republic. So we're considering a number of things, and I just wanted to bring it up so you know that these are the best discussion I've had is actually with County Hauling. They gave me really good information about how we can keep our potential RFP low. One is essentially a lot of ad alternates, considering different options so that we have things to choose from once we get the returns. Partial automation versus fully manual. Right now, we're fully manual. Waste Management is really trying to push everybody towards at least partial automation, which is the same type of truck, but with a mechanical arm on the back of it. That's one thing. Although then you have to have, you're limited to 1 cart and 1 recycling cart. And if you want more, you have to pay for more. There's discussions around that actually, it's similar to a pay to throw, which is actually something that they argue for in sustainability, because you're limited to this is what you can throw away. So you really got to start thinking, can I recycle more? Can I, put things in can I compost, that kind of thing. So, that's one of the arguments or what we're being considered for the partial automation versus fully manual. The other thing is that could help us get a lower is being willing to accept multiple day pickups. So breaking us down necessarily possibly into wards. So any given person would get the same pickup day every week, but we might have 3 different pickup days for Crafton. Because, if you're County Hauling and you have Mount Lebanon and you have Scott, and you're doing those 5 days a week, you can just sneak over and do Crafton a couple of those days and not have to hire a whole new staff or whatnot. So that's one thing that they said. Another is and this was very important, is mutual option years. Right now, the way our contract is set up, it was a 5-year contract with 5 option years. We were the one who decide whether those 5 option years happen. Waste Management had no say in the matter. And so if we accepted it, they just had to provide it. Now they tell us that we should get, because of the chaos that has happened in the last 5 years in this market, no good hauler is going to give you good prices on option years without them being able to agree to them as well. So they say that they suggested that we have option years that are like 6 or 9 months out, that we would say, we want to use the price that you guys suggested for this option year, but they would have to agree to it as well. And that way, if the market goes, sideways, they're not stuck with a rate that they can't afford to provide service for, and we're not stuck with somebody else for service. But we have to do that early enough so that we can have this process again if we're forced to do that again. And then alley pickup is an issue. I know Charlene came last week and mentioned, and I have since learned that we are supposed to be on alley pickup right now. We're supposed to be having single axle trucks in doing some 400 pickups, and it hasn't been happening for a while. So we're discussing what that means for us and how we can handle that moving forward. And what we're gonna do with the new, are we gonna include that as an option on the new RFP? And then, so those are all the things that we're looking at in the RFP and add alternates and whatnot. And I hope to have a draft RFP by the next meeting so that we can all have a look at it. And then we are also meeting, Coletta and I are meeting with the city again next week. They would be involved in an intercooperation agreement. So the nice thing is we could bid this out, see what we get back from all these other providers and what options we have. And then we can take that discussion to the city if we don't like what we've found, and see if they're willing to, accommodate us or, if we're in the right ball. So any questions? That's where we're at now on the waste stuff, waste collection. Okay. And with that is the end of my report.
Great. Standing committee reports, finance, administration, sustainability, Ms. Perry.
Yeah, so thank you, Jim, for all covering so much on the sustainability part. Outside of that, we meet next week, so we'll have updates on the next meeting. And that's
Thank
it.
you. All right, thank you, Ms. Perry. Infrastructure and land use, Ms. Compitello.
Okay, I just have two items. The zoning ordinance update. This one has been ongoing for well over a year now. We're getting close to the end stages. We are waiting on written sections from our consultant, ZoneCo. So those are due to us very shortly. We've gone through
Tomorrow I should get.
tomorrow. They're due to us tomorrow. So we've gone through public engagement. We've gone through the first phase of diagnostics. Last year, we went through the calibration phase that wrapped up. We've had a lot of steering committee back and forth and review to develop the concepts that they are building into their third stage, which is this draft, fully rewritten draft that they owe us. We'll then review that. And the goal is to have that in public review this summer. So we'll keep updates coming on that, but it's moving forward, and sounds like tomorrow we'll be getting that draft from them. And then the other update is the Safe Streets for All SS4A federal grant. This is a funding source that we've talked about over the past few months. We've talked about it in relation to some of the discussions we've had about street safety and speeding and signage along Crafton Boulevard. This federal grant would be community-wide. It would apply to the entire borough. We are preparing an application for grant funding. The Safe Streets for All federal grant provides planning funds for a community to do a municipal-wide, so in our case, a borough-wide street safety assessment to identify our conflict points, safety issues, speeding issues, all kinds of transportation-related safety issues, and then identify some projects that we would like to do to address that safety. So it could be street improvements, it could be intersection improvements, it could be bump outs, it could be better signage, it could be bike lanes. There are a number of things that could fall under that category. But the first step, we're applying for a federal grant to do a planning study to identify what our safety issues are and what projects we want to do. Once we do that, if we get these federal funds and we do that plan, it's called an action plan. We are then queued up to apply for a second round of funding for implementation. So we are hoping to submit that grant in May and hopefully get those funds.
Just one additional thing, Kirsten, that I know you'll be interested in. I just noticed today that the multimodal fund for DCD is open. And so I plan to apply for the Crafton Boulevard school safety streetscaping there. So
I suppose we could also add that several of us, including Mayor Perry, have also had conversations with our congressman about some discretionary funds that as of this week, we heard from him that those guidelines are being finalized very soon, so in the next few weeks, we should get notice as to whether the congressional discretionary funds will be available to support our Crafton Boulevard project, which is the one that we have fairly ready to go, so it's most queued up for that, and we have asked Congressman DeLucio before, and we are in the running for another year. So in the next few weeks, we should know whether those funds are available.
And I believe they choose 15 projects in his district per year. Or they've done it last year. Anything else?
That's all from my committee.
All right, great. Planning Commission, Mr. Rodella.
Hello, so last meeting we appointed 2 new members, so we're all fully staff on the commission. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 23rd, which is,
We're moving it back a week
okay, yep, so we moved back a week,
to the 30th.
the 30th.
Forward.
Sorry. Yeah,
Forward week, yeah.
Yes.
His back is this week.
I think I'm back.
I think
Anyway.
it names this-
Yeah, I think I'm.
You might be alone.
Right? Oh, you were there?
Yeah.
It's at the pro-
What was Steve?
There you go.
Let's take a vote.
Bad. 30.
So you're revived, okay.
Pushing it back, right?
To the 30th,
Yeah, so, yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
and we're gonna notify everybody.
Yeah, we have
public and
to,
all
we have
that.
to put it
Yeah,
out on an
okay.
advertisement, and we would, and we canceled the last meeting because we didn't really have any of the zoning draft ready, so I didn't want to waste everybody's time. This time it was worth the money because we have the draft out and we want people to review it, so. Or we'll have the draft, hopefully, knock on wood.
Right. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Videla. Communication and Recreation, Ms. Bolenbach.
Thank you. Our next event coming up is our Cleanup and Arbor Day celebration, April 27th. That consists of a shredding and medicine take back event in conjunction with Dan Deasy and Wayne Fontana. That's going to run from 8 to 11 in the park. That's also going to have dumpsters available for anybody to dispose of, spring cleaning items. Also between 9 a.m. and 12 on the same day, you can meet at the Borough Building at 9 a.m. We're having a borough cleanup. And you can join other community members to just walk around the borough and pick up any junk you might find. We also have a senior dinner coming up on May 4th. And we did talk a little bit at the previous meeting about moving the time back, but for this particular one, they are keeping it at 4:30. But starting the next one on August 3rd, they will push that back for 5:30 to accommodate our church going community members. So this one starts at 4:30, dinner starts at 5. And there's going to be music, mocktails. They're going to give away prizes for the best Kentucky Derby outfits and things like that. So if you're interested in joining, you can always go to our website and purchase some tickets. They're $10 a piece. I believe you reserve online and then you pay at the door. Yeah. Thank you. Other than that, we have our music festival. Actually, we have our additional senior dinners coming on August 3rd to November 2nd. Our music festival will be Saturday, June 1st. Independence Day on July 4th with our fireworks. That's a Thursday this year. Fall Fest falls again on a Saturday, September 28th. We have Haunted Crafton that'll begin on October 19th with a trunk or treat in the park, and that will run through Halloween, October 31st. Our Celebration of Lights will be December 7th that's a Saturday. And on Sunday, December 15th is our Christmas house tour. And as always, we're looking for vendors and volunteers. So if anybody's interested to do either, please go to Crafton's website, or the borough website to sign up. Our logo update, we should be getting the first drafts this month. So as soon as we hear back from them, we will let you all know. And the newsletter is in the mail, so you should be getting it shortly. Our next newsletter will be slated to be coming in early August. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Bolenbacher. Commission vacancy, Ms. Polkownik.
Yep, so have a few here. First one, we will be making a motion, but this is gonna be for our civil service alternative seat. Would like to appoint Susan O'Connell to the civil service alternative seat. Worth noting that currently Susan is the vacancy chair. She was aware and she knew to move into civil service, she would be letting that go and you scan a little further, you'll see we're already filling that. So that all worked out great. So I would like to make a motion to appoint Susan O'Connell to a term as a Civil Service Commission alternate for a current term that will expire on May 20th.
Second.
Mr. Chandler, Ms. Compatello, second. Any discussion or questions? Susan O'Connell was a prior mayor, I believe, and also council person, and I believe a council president. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Great. Next one will be a library appointment. Would like to appoint Daniel Harold to one of our 2 Crafton Borough seats on the Crafton Public Library's Board of Trustees. Worth noting, I have 2 seats. One is already full. Those dates were adjusted correctly, so we are only needing to appoint one, and that would be Daniel. So I'd like to make a motion to appoint Daniel Harold to the Crafton Public Library's Board of Trustees for a term to commence on May 21st, 2024, and end on May 18th, 2027.
So moved.
Mr. Chandler,
Second.
Mr. Hope. Discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Great. And our last one is, kind of goes in with the Susan, but to appoint Alice J. Pescuric, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Pescuric,
Sure.
to the Crafton Borough Vacancy Board for a term to expire on December 31st. I read that as it was the motion, but that is the motion I would like to.
I'm sorry, I realized I made a mistake. I corrected one and didn't
Oh,
correct
yes.
the other.
Yep.
So it's supposed to be 2024.
24, sorry.
Sorry, we have to appoint a vacancy chair. I corrected one and didn't correct it.
Yeah, well, I'll read the
What is-
correct one
what-
again,
no.
just for the record.
Only once a year.
So yeah, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Alice J. Pescuric to the Crafton Borough Vacancy Board for a term to expire on December 31st, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Chandler, Ms. Compatello, discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Motion passes.
So wrapping this up, we do have a few, not many left. We've done a great job of advertising and getting wonderful candidates to apply for these seats. So truly appreciate everybody taking the time to apply, to go through interviews. It's been lots of wonderful candidates. We have a few vacancies that will still be left. I think, Jim, if I'm reading this one correctly, we just filled our civil service alternate seats. Zoning hearing board, we're still working through those applicants and interviews. Library board has been filled. Shade Tree Commission, again, working through some of those applicants as well. And then we will have some upcoming civil service, recreation board, and zoning hearing throughout the year. So I would just continue to encourage folks to keep their eye on Savvy Citizen. That's where we've been promoting or advertising any vacant seats. If something interests you, please apply and we'll, go through that interview process. So there you go.
Thank you, Ms. Compatello. And Council of Government, COG, Ms. Bolenbacher.
Just that our next meeting is next Thursday, April 18th at 6:30. We'll be here in Crafton. We're hosting in the community room. And so I would love to see people come because I love you there. So some representation would be great. I believe we're ordering from Serafino. So if
Yep.
food's gonna be your drive, so be it.
Yep. Three
Is
Serafino.
anybody, I'll be there.
I'm checking my calendar.
Ms.
Yes, I'll be there.
Sure, now y'all come. Great.
Right, exactly. You should have heard, like, everybody, when I mentioned it to Dan Deasy might be showing up now, but yeah.
Aaron's like, "Hey, guys."
So that's all.
Right.
Great, thank you. Community announcements. So the next council meeting is Thursday, April 25th at 7. The Crafton Spring Forward Cleanup Day. Ms. Bolenbacher went through all the details of that, including the Arbor Day also the Arbor Day celebration is at 11 o'clock in the park, and that will be a dedication of us being a Tree City USA. And just a little speech and a little tiny ceremony, but everybody's welcome. Election Day, the primary is next Tuesday, April 23rd, or I'm sorry, in 2 weeks, April 23rd from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Please make sure to check your polling locations. And then the Kentucky Derby, Ms. Bolenbacher also mentioned. Does anybody else have any announcements or questions? Yes. All right. Public comment. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council has the option to respond or not at the end of the address. Please state your name and physical address for the record. Anybody want to speak? Mr. Marsden?
Wozniak, 1773 Bar Avenue. I have a question on the paving and the separation projects. Are any of them going to happen on Brick Street? And what is if they are, I don't know, I didn't see them all, but if Brick Streets are involved, we'll keep trying to approach.
Okay, we're not answering. So basically, you'll just state everything that you want to go through, and then we have the option to answer. Is that it? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so do we want to address the question about the brick streets at all?
Yeah, sure.
That's what I would.
What's that?
That if I knew the answer, I would. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on which sewer separation project. There's now two, because there's the Broadhead one. And the Broadhead one, there are some that are getting saved. The Crenell is gonna be trenched and re-bricked. But the others in Broadhead are not, for the most part. I don't think, is there a little bit on?
I would have started with the street repaving program.
Yeah.
Because that's the newer piece. The
Yeah.
Broadhead project, we have, there are no changes to that. We've presented it and talked about it in past months, so we've been giving regular updates about the status to it, but we have shown, what was that, late fall or so? We showed the full designs, and we talked through what we were able to keep and what we were not able to keep, and none of that has changed. So most of those streets are going to be asphalt. We did manage to fit into what we could afford with our budget to keep some of the brick along the bottom of Linwood and North Emily and along Crenell. So some of the intersections and those pieces, right as you come into those streets, we're not repaving the entirety of Linwood or North Emily, but the portions that are down by the busway and down by Crenell are included in the project, and we'll be keeping the brick in those locations. Most of the rest of the Broadhead project is on other streets, and it will all be asphalt. But the details of that haven't changed since we presented the final designs and voted on those in, I believe that was fall. The street repaving that we mentioned tonight for the annual repaving program, none of those are brick streets. Those are all asphalt streets.
Yep. And and that is the next step, basically. We're way late already on the paving program, just getting up to speed on all the other projects. That's next steps. We plan to figure out ways that we can manage that moving forward, and also manage so we just did 1 year really. But we'd like to map out 5 years. Now that once we get this out to bid, we won't be time crunched. You want to get your paving projects out as early as you can. We're way later than we would hope to be, just because it was all new and we had a new system and everything. So that's the goal then, and then to figure out a plan for the brick streets, to repair, or what we can do to save the rest of them moving forward.
All right.
Follow up.
Yes, well, I think that's it. We have to remain,
You can come up afterwards and ask questions.
yeah, we have to remain consistent.
Relinquish the
Yeah.
lecture and. You should just ask your questions.
Yeah. All right, anybody else? Okay, anybody on Zoom, please raise your hand. All right, with that, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.